Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. To timestamp this, it's just gone 11 a.m. on Friday, October the 20th, so we are circa just under 24 hours until FPL's game week 9 deadline. For transparency on me on FPL, no transfers made yet this week. There might not be any. Eddie Howe and Mikel Arteta's updates this morning are not particularly helpful. I am most likely, if I make a move, to go from Sven Botman to Konstantinos Tsimikas, but I may just roll. Undecided as yet. As a reminder as well, before I get into the questions, that tickets are available now for our live show on Sunday, November the 5th at the Thirsty Bear pub in Waterloo in central London. We'll have a live screening of the two Super Sunday games, Nottingham Forest versus Aston Villa and Luton versus Liverpool, and then a live podcast reviewing all the game week 11 football. Tickets are available from £5. All proceeds will go to the game week 39 charity fundraiser, which will be played next summer, and the podcast and live show will be brought to you in partnership with our friends at FPL Meets, who organise a lot of good events for the FPL community. As I said, links in the bio if you want to buy tickets for that and join us for what frankly is going to be a party on that day. Right, let's get into the questions. Hollis Stamos says, hello James, who would you start in draft game? Isak or Grealish? Minutes worry with both. I'd probably start Isak, but the word this morning seems to be that he hasn't trained, so I'm going to presume he's not going to play. So I think Isak's probably likely to be completely out. So I'd go with Isak from the potential upside perspective, but it's probably not going to matter, mate. Aaron Hill says, hey James, wondering your thoughts on doubling up on premium goalies on wildcard. I know it's looked upon very poorly, but I have good team value and the rotation works better for me going forward. The reason it will be looked upon poorly, mate, is quite simply that, sure, from a rotation perspective can work great, but that's money coming away from the rest of your team. So if you're just looking at the goalkeepers specifically and only, then sure, fantastic, great, no problem at all. But there's value that's got to be used in the rest of your team. Plus, I think there are a number of very cheap goalkeepers that can be considered at the moment. Turner so far has retained his place for Nottingham Forest. West Ham coming to a really good run of fixtures from 10. Crystal Palace coming to a really good run of fixtures from game week 11. It just doesn't feel necessary, in my opinion, to go down that route, Aaron. But as ever, play it your way. Alistair Coper says, hey mate, plan was to do Richie to Jota/Diaz before wildcard 10 if we got a leak, but I might need to change Botman now as Kabore is back up. Do you think Botman plays, and do you think Richie starts Monday? On Richie, yes. I think he probably starts Monday, but I'd be looking to bin that next week. There's a number you can go to, right? And I think you know a number of those players, the likes of Bowen, Martinelli, subject to what you got available. My instincts on Botman through the week has generally been that he probably would play. Not that I've got any insight on that. To get some minutes in him before the game against Dortmund, which is on Wednesday. But thinking about it more, they might just take the view that as he's a centre-back, he doesn't necessarily need the fitness going into that game and therefore would rather protect him. And I'm kind of leaning more towards the latter, plus Jamal Lascelles' big taste. He has performed quite well in his absence. So with Palace's lack of attacking options at the moment, they might deem that they can get through tomorrow without him and not risk him. So I'm probably leaning more towards he's not going to play. And that's what's leaning me to think about Tsimikas, for example. For me as well, looking at the rotation going forward with a Botman rather than, say, a Trippier, he'd often be a very good first sub option for me. But Tsimikas would obviously pretty much play in the majority of the games coming up if these Robertson reports of a speculated 10-week absence are correct. I don't think Tsimikas would start every game over the forthcoming period, but he might do. He may well do. And I know there's a few that speculated on Gomez playing left back or Jarell Quansah coming in, for example. I think Tsimikas will go in. I think it'd be a bit of a slap to him with Robertson unavailable if he didn't play, actually. So I think he'll get the minutes. I don't think he'll be a hugely big attacking threat to be totally honest. But he's liable to chip in with something at some stage. So, yeah, I'm probably a little bit more in favour of moving Botman now than I was prior to Eddie Howe's press conference, I'd say. Emmanuel Topo says, hey man, nice content. I watched a couple of Clash of the Correspondent videos this week. Really loved that series. Great work. Just wanted to know what's your take on the Loris scene after being a club legend and captain. That's a good question. I was thinking about this earlier today, actually. Not earlier today, earlier this week, about could we give him like a farewell game? You know, for example, he's probably going to move on in January, I should imagine. Fraser Forster's being favoured over him as the backup goalkeeper at the moment. Hugo's not one who's going to kick off. I mean, there's a number of reasons why he stayed. I think a lot of people think it's money related, but he has been genuinely very, very settled in London for him and his family, and it gives him more time to think about his options. But I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had a nice home game in the FA Cup third round that potentially could play him before he left, for example, would be really nice. Yeah, major love for Hugo. The position obviously needed changing. Bashir's clearly gone and over, unfortunately, but has been a magnificent servant for Tottenham. He should have left after his first year. It was ridiculous that he stayed around because he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world at that point, in my opinion. So very thankful for everything he's done for Tottenham, and I can only say good words about him, to be totally honest. So, yeah, I hope there's a farewell. I was a bit disappointed in the summer. It looked like he was obviously going to go and kind of got cast off, and there wasn't kind of a goodbye because he joined the club, in 2012, I want to say. That's a long time, right? So it would be nice if there could be something for Hugo, who's been club captain. I guess a little bit of a club legend. I think it's fair to put him in that bracket. With probably certainly in Tottenham's top 5 ever goalkeepers, for example. It would be nice to have a proper farewell for him. Chris Smith says, with Botman still a doubt, should I get Trippier and Areola for Botman and Flecken -4? It keeps my route to both Saka and Martinelli open in 10 as well. Another hit though. Yeah, if you're going to do it for a defensive player, do it for Kieran Trippier would be the advice. I'm not massive on it. Again, this probably depends, Chris, what you've got on your bench and stuff, to be very honest with you. There are reports as well that Flecken may have trained this week. I know we might get more from Thomas Frank later today, but there has been some reports suggesting that what looked like a bad appendicitis illness looks like he might be over it, might be back in training. So that Brentford's fixtures are difficult after this week, but then you're -4 in a worse goalkeeper this week in Areola for Flecken this week, I would say. Areola's got a tough game at Villa, obviously, so I'd be keen probably not to do it. Depends on your bench. The other way around it, Chris, is obviously just probably what I'm considering now is just going, I'm not going to go sideways to Burn or something, and look at the Shimikas route. Panos says, hey James, what do you think about wildcard game week 14? Was planning on game week 10, but removing Man United, Spurs, Newcastle with good fixtures seems wrong. So why 14 in that case? Because Tottenham go to Manchester City and Newcastle and Manchester United play each other? There's so many other good teams got good runs in the meantime. Arsenal, Villa, West Ham, Brighton, for example. 14 is also, I would suggest, a period that's before Manchester City's good turn of fixtures. It's also before another good turn for Tottenham. It's before a good turn for Chelsea. I wouldn't be massively keen on that. If it works best for you based on your setup, then sure, great. But I think most people who haven't used it yet are probably either going to be now, next week would be preferred, or game week 18, 19. And I know nearly everyone's saying 19 at the moment. I think game week 18 might become a little bit more popular the closer we get to it. I'm on the strategy at the end. I wouldn't see enough benefits in 14. You've still got Liverpool and Arsenal with great fixtures there, and they've got great fixtures before it. West Ham's still okay from their run, from their perspective. Villa then becomes difficult, but it's kind of Villa's last good fixture is game week 14. Brighton still have good fixture starters, but it's a couple more. It's only a couple more for those clubs, and then it gets worse again. So personally, I don't think it's ideal. Kenneth Faz says, do you think Kabore will play? Have him and Botmanson not sure what to do. Wildcarding in 10. Any spicy 1 week defender punts? Does it matter if we think Kabore will play or not? What's the I know Forest away is not a terrible fixture, but Forest home record's very good. What's your expectation? I want 2 points on Kabore. From that perspective, I'd be thinking of better. So if you're looking for 1 week punts defensively, Porro, Doggy, Van der Ven is cheap enough that could be considered. Shimikas obviously comes into play here. perhaps the likes of Dan Burn at Newcastle, Dalot at Manchester United if that's affordable, maybe even Raphael Varane. Brentford would probably be avoidable because I think there's too many defensive injury issues there. Similar with Forest, actually, in terms of 1 week punts. So there's a number there that you could consider, and I'd probably be keen to get that sorted in that sort of situation. If you're looking at, will Kabore play? Does it matter? And what if the problem comes next week and Botman's still not back? You're looking at Kabore again away to Villa, then it starts looking really ugly. I'd probably get it fixed, to be honest. Rob H says, good morning, James. Sky question. Already have Sunday and Monday well covered for captaincy, but worth doing a Diaz to Bowen / Maddison, even though I'm not captain. Got 41 transfers left. So having re-looked at my plans last night, if Shimikas is in the team tomorrow, which obviously in Sky we have the benefit of waiting for that news to come through, then I've got the exact money to move from Bayer to Shimikas. It means a little bit of reworking where basically I'm not going to go back to Rodri, and it means selling Silva before I sell Colwell on Monday. But I'm looking at reworking that. I'm looking to add to Maddison this week by getting Son and Romero. I wouldn't add Maddison, would be my take at the moment. If he's sitting there with Son or Romero, I'd leave it. And Bowen feels way more like it's one that could be left till next week. With that one, I think you could probably come back for Jared Bowen from Ruben Diaz a little bit later. I would have thought. I'm just trying to think. West Ham's game at Brentford, is that a Saturday or a Sunday? I'm going to check that for you. Sorry, that's really bad for everyone that's watching live. I just want to check that. West Ham at Brentford, it's a Saturday. That's not ideal. So you could make the case maybe to go Diaz to Bowen next Sunday, which is not ideal. It's on the day, so I guess if you want to make that move, then yes, it would be this week. I don't mind that Diaz to Bowen. If that's your only route to Bowen, then yes, probably this Sunday. Richard F says, good morning. If you could live anywhere in the world, not in England, where would you choose and why? Somewhere close enough that I could get home. So a nice little island in Spain or Portugal or something like that. Weather's normally good and better than here. So yeah, I wouldn't want to be too far away, I don't think. Always been fascinated by Japan. I don't know if I'd want to live there necessarily though. Aaron Hill says, I know I'm getting ahead, but next week I'll have 2 free transfers. Which 2 moves do you think are best? Wilson to Watkins, Flecken to any goalkeeper to avoid starting Turner, and Bumo to Mitoma, Son to Saka. Cheers. Well, the main thing on that is what you're doing about captaincy next week, but on the face of it, I just think Saka and Watkins from the most powerful perspective there. It's kind of one of them to captain for me probably next week. JP says, hi James, roll transfer upgrade Morris Botman to Højlund Trips. I mean, if you can go Botman to Trips and kind of 1 free, then subject to whatever your planned future moves are, like I can't give you a real reason to say no. I'm not massively keen on going Højlund. Again, consider the outcome. You go Højlund, Sheffield United. All right, how do you feel potentially looking at the game against Man City next week? Does that mean something else? So I think, to be honest, more power in rolling generally. But again, what's on your bench? Like playing Morris at Forest, I think is fine. Botman, we've already spoken about quite a bit. What's your cover if he doesn't play? JP also says, as you're a Spurs fan, do you think Maddison sometimes overplays? Guess it works out in the end, as he's normally involved in the goals. I think most number 10s, which are a dying breed, probably overplay a little bit, but he's high risk, right? He's someone who plays low percentages in what he does, so perhaps he tries take-ons more than he should. Perhaps he tries the risk pass more than the safe pass, but that's part where you get the creativity with him, so I have no problem with that. Emmanuel Topo says, hi James, I have 2 transfers. Should I do Darwin out to Højlund for some United presence? The other option would be Morris to Archer, or do both. Confused AF. Morris to Archer's only got to be to allow moves for something else, which is fine. But it'd probably be better off leaving that, to be honest. Selling, if I was on Darwin or Diaz at the moment, I know a few will be. I think I generally, in most cases, just play them. There's a few where I'd bench because I don't think either will start tomorrow. That's subject to what Jurgen Klopp, I think, says about Cody Gakpo later today. I think Diaz would be more likely to start than Núñez. But with Núñez, if I had him, I'd still want him there next week, and the week's coming up. So I would just leave it be, to be totally honest. Jerry Domerue says, hello James, hope you and your family are doing well. As a Spurs fan yourself, what are your thoughts on Mana's Instagram posts amidst the Israel-Palestine war? Apologies for this question. You don't need to apologise for the question, mate. It's absolutely fine. I had a discussion about it on our Tottenham podcast on Tottenham and Arsenal. I spoke about it for about 10 minutes, started that podcast on Wednesday on Patreon. And I'd said that I thought it was ill-advised, but I also said that I understand that there's a human being there that's grieving and upset for what's happening in his country at the moment, and he is obviously going to be biased to his side. There isn't a particular side at the moment. All I see is an atrocity where innocent people are dying on both sides, and we need to try and find peace as quickly as possible. That's all I know. JP says, should I bring back Rodri on Sky or keep Saka? Be keeping Saka because I'd want to captain him next Saturday against Sheffield United if I owned him. Jerry says, FPL question, with Arsenal's fixture swing in game week 10, do you think Martinelli and Jesus can cover Saka himself, or is getting Saka priority due to his penalty taker situation? Well, his penalty taker situation is sometimes he likes to give it away, so I wouldn't let that be definitive of why having Saka or not. For me, I could see me potentially captaining Saka in game week 10 and 12, whereas I wouldn't be as comfortable doing that with the others, so I'd rather have the captaincy option in place. So no, I'd rather have Saka. Very much got eyes on getting Martinelli myself potentially next week as well. I could see me potentially even going, if I end up getting Shimikas now, I could see me taking a -4 for Martinelli and Bowen next week possibly, and it might be going into next week. I'd maybe go, actually I'm going to go Martinelli instead, which actually going Shimikas now will probably just about allow me to do straight from Jeremy Doku. I obviously want to move on. And then come back for Bowen a little bit later on, perhaps when sort of West Ham play Forest in game week 12, and Tottenham begins to come into a more difficult period. I might look at it that way. Not decided yet, obviously. But yeah, I would want Saka, as long as Saka's fit. I mean, there's a case to say, I think, that he's the best value player in the game, or the worst value in terms of he's too cheap. So that you can say he's back to his starting price now. And for those who are not on, it's certainly something to be considered in forthcoming weeks. For me, there's every chance I'll captain him in 10 and 12. Now, for those who are on the Salah route, that's less of a priority. Get that. For me, with Haaland away to United and away to Chelsea, there'll obviously be something to think about before it comes round. And Haaland's the insurance where if there's doubts, I can just obviously still go with him. But yeah, Saka next week, I'd want a captain, is probably my plan at the moment. So I'd want him to be a part of that. You could captain Martinelli next week, I think, particularly, but I wouldn't be massively keen on it. JP says, best advice to keep both Sky teams strong but different at the same time. Is it possible? Of course it is. You can use your second team to kind of go off track, where you've got split decisions. You kind of deviate. I'll make this transfer for this player. I'll make this player for this one. What I do with my second team, JP, which is doing all right at the moment. It's about 5k. I think 42 transfers left. One player per team, and I might go in certain periods, say like Monday to Friday with 2 Tottenham, for example. Say if I want to flip. So what I'm trying to do is get the best player, the best asset from all the top teams if I can, basically. So I think I've got Son in for Tottenham at the moment. So it might be that I leave that quite possibly. But that's what I'm trying to do, is get kind of the best talisman, if you will, from each team, which is with balance. So it might be that it has to become Saliba rather than Saka, for example. But yeah, that's how I do it. Robin Richmond says, good morning, sir. Really want to roll this week, but I've Botman, Estupinan and Bell all flagged in defence. So I gamble one player will take one out, which will mean -4 next week. I'd probably move Estupinan on, to be honest. He might be back next week, but there hasn't been any strong indication yet. Roberto De Zerbi might tell us different later on today. He probably doesn't play against Fulham next week, would be my instinct at the moment. And how long do you leave that? It starts becoming a problem. Now, you can always flip it back, right, and go back to him if you want. But I'd probably move him on. Like, if you can go something like Bell to Shimikas as discussed, then sure, great, do it. But that might be more difficult. Whereas with Estupinan, you've probably got your choice from like Porro, Doggy, Matty Cash, Gabriel. You've got so many more options, and I'd really consider moving that on. Frederick Hertz says, wildcarded last week, so pretty happy with my team. The only thing I might do is burn to Shimikas as a punt. Rest of the defence is Trips, Cash and Gabriel and Estupinan ready for the fixture swing. Yeah, with Burn in place, I'd just leave that, I think. I'd just leave that. Michael Lowe says, hi James, hope you're well. Now that we've had a slight update on Bayer, not the clearest, assume he's got to go in Sky. Question, do you still reckon Lyle Foster is worth the switch from currently 4-4-2? Yeah, I don't hate it. Obviously, Sean Thorpe, FF Thinker, who guested on SkyPod this Wednesday's in that position. And looking at him in that position, I very much thought that was reasonable. There aren't huge forward choices in Sky at the moment. You possibly want to be conscious that you cut yourself off. So let's say your other front two, I'm going to guess, is probably Haaland and Watkins under that format. Once you go for Foster, you're potentially cutting yourself off. And what I mean by that is if you suddenly think, oh crap, I want to get Darwin Núñez, for example, that's going to be really tough. Really tough. That's the problem with going that sort of route. But I don't mind it. I don't mind it because I think there are escapes as well from Foster back to your likes of Nakamba and a few others in midfield. But if you go for a player like that, you need to every single week be evaluating, how do I get rid? And every week just evaluate. And you don't have to, by the way. Of course you don't, because we're talking about maybe buying him. But you need to always have a plan. And you need to always be able to be accurate with that plan. So if your plan is, say your get out was Basuma, as an example, and I think Foster's 6'5", Basuma's 7'3", you need to be working to your plan, always going forward, that you've always got the kind of 0.8 spare. LH says, morning James, thank God the football's back. Any planned moves on Sky, mate? Think I'll be rolling FPL and hopefully no transfers this week on Sky. All the best. Thank you for the question. I have covered near the start, so I'm going to skip that one. It also says, best Colwell replacement on Sky, under 8 million, preferably a mid or a defender. Under 8, and it's Christian Romero, I think, Monday night, mate. Damn it 182 says, hi James, was all set on getting in Virgil van Dijk and holding till Christmas, but with Shimikas now an option, is there any point paying the extra? Cheers. No, probably not. It's long enough, I think, the Robertson injury, by the sound of things, that I think it could be gambled there with Shimikas. And of course you can use him more as a rotator, so like when they go to Man City in game week 13, if you want to leave him out, that's of course perfectly reasonable. That's what most of us will end up doing. For those of us who end up buying, and I by no means decided yet, but Van Dijk would be no consideration for me right now. FPL Glasto says, do we think any games might be at risk due to flooding and transport issues? Flooding, I'd be surprised, but look, if it becomes so excessive that the drainage can't handle it, then it's potentially a problem, but that probably needs to happen at kickoff. In terms of travel, it will only be really, I guess, if there's travel directly impacted, particularly round getting to a specific stadium. So let's use the example I always use, right, with these things is Brighton. Now, Brighton aren't at home tomorrow, but I use this as an example. So with Brighton, basically you need to get the train to get to Falmer where Brighton is, right? If that train is not running, it's a potential problem. Right. Say my team played there last year and there was no trains, but sort of coaches were organised and it was planned. If suddenly the weather struck and then there's no trains, people ain't going to get to the ground. So in terms of the fixtures this weekend, where that's possibly problematic tomorrow, I don't see many particularly. Really don't. Not at the fixtures tomorrow. So the London game's surely not a problem. I know Nottingham might have particularly bad weather, but it's certainly walkable from Nottingham train station. Obviously, the people who live in Nottingham can walk to the stadium. That's not a problem. Bournemouth, similar. No real concerns from that. So I'd be very, very surprised if any of them were in trouble from transport issues. If the wind is bad, and I don't want to scare anyone here, but if the wind is really, really bad, one stadium that can be affected is the Etihad. And that's because of the way the staircases are built at the Etihad, in that they're quite open and the ventilation allows the wind to come through. So if the wind was really bad, ironically, the one that would be worst is possibly Manchester City. And that for a moment would make me think, I'm not going to captain Haaland this week. Like, not at all, no. It is very unlikely that any games will be postponed. I've got to be honest, I've not massively looked at the weather detail for tomorrow, but I'd be very, very surprised. The wind one, as I said, that might cause an issue could be Manchester City. Have a look back up. There was a midweek set of fixtures in I'm trying to remember the season, 13-14. There's a midweek set of fixtures around February time. And I know this because I watched Tottenham at Newcastle that night, and that game went ahead. And a lot of the games in the Northwest were postponed. And I think Manchester City, from memory, were due to play Everton, if I remember right. And it was specifically called off because of wind and what I just explained. So, okay, something to keep an eye on. Definitely not something for anyone to worry about. Please don't quote me on Twitter about any of that. FPL Glasto, that's what we've done. Rhino says, morning, James. Hope the boy enjoying school. Yes, doing very well, thank you, mate. Have you given any thought to free hit 18? Some very attackable fiction, keep off City, maybe even buy some Brentford. So I'd mentioned at the start that I think wildcard 18 might become a little bit more popular the closer it gets. And that's purely because of the fixtures in that game week. So you've got Arsenal, Liverpool playing each other. It doesn't feel kind of ideal, but both have okay runs of fixtures afterwards, particularly Arsenal, it's worth saying. But the thing with the free hitting in 18 is I just don't think there's enough good fixtures. I think it might be a week that for many we need to survive. And the reason I mentioned wildcard in 18 is perhaps you can get to an 11 you know that's going to play and carry you through, and that would probably include a bit of Liverpool and Arsenal, for example. But you could, for example, Haaland, Alvarez, Stones, and perhaps Flecken as your substitutes, as an example. Maybe invest in one more Brentford if the double were to happen in game week 20. But when I look at the fixtures in 18, what I see is three teams that you'd really want a piece of. So Tottenham are at home to Everton, Aston Villa at home to Sheffield United, and Newcastle away to Luton. Those are the three that would really interest us. And I just wonder how far away we'll be from that anyway. And what I mean by that as well is obviously interesting Villa players at the moment, in the likes of Watkins, Cash, Diaby, perhaps Chappelle, Torres, etc. And I think some of that might get held through. I'm working on a plan at the moment that might even see me bench Watkins in, say, game week 13, for example, maybe even game week 15. To keep hold of that, I think Matty Cash would be a rotatable option. Want to keep that, so I'd probably have that in play. There's chance I still have something Tottenham. Tottenham go to Forest the week before. There's home games which are difficult, West Ham and Newcastle before that, but I think most teams will probably still have some Tottenham. And a lot of teams are going to carry through, the likes of Kieran Trippier, for example. So free hitting into three teams that are probably people are going to have some coverage of anyway. And other than that, there's probably nothing else worth getting excited about in game week 18. So it would be specifically for those three. Now, if you got there and you had none of those three teams, then there would be a case to do it. I still think the free hit chip will be far more used to people at the back end of the season, whether it's for one of the double game weeks or whether it's for the blank on the FA Cup quarterfinals. Teams that double in game week 34 are likely to be different from teams that double in game week 37. That's a really, really important thing to try and remember. Really, really important. The reason for that is the FA Cup semi-finals on the weekend of 34. So any team that has a game postponed because of an FA Cup semi-final obviously can't double that game week, right? They'll play the fixture in the midweek, or they'll play their kind of 29 if that's the quarter-final weekend, rearrange fixture in there. Whereas 37 is just like a normal double. So 34 is probably going to have a couple of teams blank and probably 4 or 5 teams double as an example. But the teams who double in 34, the good teams, won't double in 37 as well. They're more likely to have the double in 37 and still just a single fixture in 34. So the free hit could be very useful for that, to attack, or obviously, as said, to cover up obviously the quarter-final weekend as well. So it will still, for the majority of people, be better off being used later in the season. Mitchell Rawlins says, good evening from Australia. Have you seen the Beckham documentary? And if so, what's it like viewing it from the lens of a Spurs supporter? Love the pod. Keep up the great content, Mitch. Thank you, Mitch. I haven't seen it yet. I do intend to. So I can't really answer your question, I'm afraid, but it's on the list of things that I'll probably get round to in about a year's time. JP says, are Chelsea better with or without Thiago Silva as he's suited to a back three, in my opinion? Well, Chelsea have played a back four in nearly every game this season, and then defensive record is fine, and I still think he's an exceptional defender. I think with Colwell playing as the left back position offers a bit of protection where, similar to Liverpool don't want Van Dijk getting drawn out into that area, I think Chelsea treat it similarly with Thiago Silva. He's outstanding still for me. So, no, I think it's fine. I think there's a lot been made of it. I think he responded to someone a few weeks ago himself about concerns about him. But I think it's being managed fine. And with Chilwell absent now, it's going to get managed fine as well. So, I think back four is fine for them as well. It allows an extra attacker, essentially, in the team. And I think Chelsea need that at the moment because there's not anyone they can kind of hang their hat on and feel confident enough or get enough goals. Tom Hyom, who is one of our patrons, did a brilliant podcast, I think, with me on FPL Poker and Variants on Patreon on Tuesday. That's available for basic plus tiers and above. Says, hello, James. Happy deadline-less Friday. Because I can't wait for your benching headaches, which two of Alvarez, Watkins and Foden would you start? Cheers. Christ. Tom, send me a team, mate. 'Cause I'm struggling to believe that there's not something worse there. I mean, on the face of it, blimey, Foden? Maybe. I suppose there's a little bit of doubt about Alvarez's minutes, but he played the full 90 for City after the last international break, didn't he? So maybe Foden? wouldn't be comfortable benching Watkins a home game, I don't think, mate. Greg Frost says, do you think Son and Maddison will be long-term holds when there's the likes of Bowen, Martinelli and Mitoma to jump on soon? This is probably a question for this time next week, see how we feel about Monday. Son's fitness is an ongoing concern, we have to be honest. And although Maddison will do great, and I think he's more capable of explosiveness than people give credit, I certainly see the massive ceiling in the likes of those others, with particularly some of those home games they have coming up. So Maddison might be a sacrifice for me next week, not because I think Maddison's bad, just because I think the others are potentially really good. Mitoma's in place for me. I've been holding him through, part because of what's coming, and as said, it could well be that I take a -4 for Bowen and Martinelli next week. So there is a case to be moving on. Son, I know Son will captain this week. I think in Haaland and Salah, presumably everyone has a decent alternative that I'd probably recommend in all seriousness. But then he's probably not captainable again until maybe that game week 18 fixture, and even then, Trippier at Luton, Isak or Wilson at Luton, Watkins at home, Sheffield United, there'll be alternatives. So Son at his value you could lose, but you know the capability, and the capability of both of those players is really good. Aaron Hill says, want to say thanks for the amazing content, James. Generally makes my day. Thank you, mate. Says, tough one. This, if you're going into a shop and have to get a bag of crisps and a chocolate bar and a drink, what are you going for? What am I going for? Well, it depends where I'm going in, probably. I'm a sucker for a Whisper because it's just fused shit chocolate. Well, I like fused shit chocolate. McCoy's generally probably salt and vinegar. Drink, I'm a Coke man. I know that's just upset the Pepsi crowd, but sorry. Sam Vine says, why is Mitoma's price flagged as going down? Because he had a flag for the best part of 10 days, mate, because he missed Japan duty because of fatigue. And as soon as someone has a flag, mate, people sell. Simple as that. Don't worry about it. If you own, don't worry about it. If you want to buy, your opening goes down. Simple as that. Zuggy says, hi James, any chance Origi starts for Forest? Yes, certainly is a chance. I think Forest should start him tomorrow rather than Chris would be my personal take. But I'd also get even from defensive set plays where Chris would potentially come in very useful for Forest, because Luton are a very aggressive team, obviously, from set plays. So I would imagine that Wood will probably play. Vish says, is Odegaard a viable alternative long-term to Saka? Of course, as is Martinelli, but I think, again, it's easier to go against Saka, I think, if you've got Salah. If you haven't got Salah, it's more difficult to go without Saka. That's my take. James Brennan says, hi James, Berbatov or Giroud? Cheers, mate. I mean, it's fairly obvious what I'm going to say to that, isn't it? Giroud has been a figure of fun at certain points, I think, for particularly Arsenal fans. Not all, at certain stages. Olivier Giroud, I've said before, I think is probably one of the best I've ever seen in terms of attacking the near post at a cross. Phenomenal. Berbatov's a joke player though, mate. Unplayable at his best. And I feel very privileged that I saw it, actually. So, Berbatov, pal. Mad Shook says, morning, James. Have a nice week. Thoughts on Palmer, sell or keep? Oh, keep, mate. Chances are you were probably benching this week, maybe, anyway. So, yeah. And have you not just bought, presumably? So, yeah, and I'd leave that be. That's kind of ideal as like 8 for Taka, isn't it? Perlo's Pen says, good afternoon, James. Thinking of selling Bruno and Rashford this game week to get Salah. Madness. Not if you really want to captain Salah. If not, I wouldn't bother. They're playing Sheffield United. I've spoken about this a lot. I wouldn't be keen on selling any player that was about to play them. And that would be my take. Colin Johnson says, morning, James. Great content. What to do with Bayer in Sky? As said, it's a potential sell. However, if Shimikas is not in a Liverpool team tomorrow, then it's a possible keep for me, and just reassess and give myself a little bit more breathing time, where the following Sunday I might have a few more choices, let's say. That could even be sort of a potential alternative to Lewis Dunk at Brighton, maybe even. Horia says, hi James, play cash or burn this week? I think cash. Although I'd be very confident the clean sheet for Newcastle and less so for Villa. I do. My instinct is Cash will play right midfield again, and I'd want to play that, mate. I'd want to play that. So yeah, Cash for me, mate. I think. Jerry Jama U says, another FPL question. Do you think Saka captain over Salah at certain game week is a good move? Saka versus Sheffield United compared to Mo versus Forest, Saka versus Burnley versus Mo, or Mo versus Brentford game, which Mo and Saka plays at home. Yeah, this is exactly what I've said. So Saka can be used very competitively against Salah. My general take would be, if I owned both in those weeks, I would probably go with Mo. If that's the straight choice between the two, because I think for Mo against Forest is fine enough, and even Brentford in 12 is fine as well. So I probably preference would be with Mo for still day. If you got Mo Salah and you're looking at alternatives when he's got the likes of Forest at home, Brentford at home, then there's a case to say you don't deserve him. MRCX says, maybe that's why I've not gone there. MRCX says, hey James, any news on Mitoma? Not as yet, but as far as we know, he missed Japan duty because of fatigue, and he should be fine. I don't anticipate any issues. Colin Con says, great content as always, James. One, would you take a -4 for Shimikas this week, or wait to take a -4 next game week? 2, if Saka fit next game week 10, who would you sell, Foden or Maddison? Probably Foden, as per the conversation with Johnny Pringle yesterday, that there's no real case other than maybe Alvarez to kind of be holding on to City stuff beyond the next couple. You could make a case for game week 11, but I'd prefer Maddison's fixture, I think, next week. In terms of if it's got to be a -4 for Shimikas in either week, I'd probably do it this week, but it also depends what you're selling, mate. So if you're selling Dan Burn, for example, then it's next week, isn't it, rather than this week? So it depends what you're selling, mate, but probably instinct would be, certainly if he plays tomorrow and if he returns, he'll be popular very, very quickly, and he's already proven so, despite I think he's got 1 FPL point this season. So it'd be a case to say do it now, but it depends what you're selling. Rob Pix says, hi mate, Sky question, own Bayer and only 7.2 to escape. He's the same position as me, mate. You got the same team. Is Shimikas a viable Sky move in the short term at 7.2? Would you go to a Foster type? Can't get to anyone from Fulham or Wolves of any use. Yeah, it's Shimikas, mate, I think. And the benefit we see the team, we know he's in it tomorrow. If obviously he is. That's the one for me, mate. Andrew Jarvis says, morning, mate. Hope you're well. Who are the best Sky Fantasy football players to bring in on Monday night? So in order, Son, Maddison, Romero, I think. But with the caveat to that arguably Romero's a better call than Maddison in the longer term, purely because I think I'd want people to pay the little bit extra from Maddison to Son. There's 0.4 difference between them in Sky Fantasy, as opposed to the 1.4 or so in FPL. So I'd want you to get up to Son. So there's a case to say, therefore, Son, Romero, Maddison. Woodstock Chris says, hello James, hope you're well, mate. Couple of benching headaches. Bench Burn or Cash? I've done that one, so I'm going to skip. Starting Udogie and Trippier, yeah, sure. Other one is start Pedro Neto or Bowen this week. Good luck and cheers. Bowen for me, purely as clear West Ham talisman if it goes well on the day. So yeah, Bowen for me, mate. Adam Keener says, generally don't know what to do about Saka, James. Got Archer, Estupinan, Kabore on the bench. Would you hold because of upcoming fixtures for Arsenal? Yeah, sell Estupinan, mate. Yeah, I get why people want to hold, but even if he's back available, there's still no guarantee he even starts anyway because of the rotation and stuff. So, no, I feel like that's the easy solution for you there, mate. It's to sell Estupinan. MRCX says, would you rather have Saka, Odegaard or Martinelli? I'd rather have Saka. Chris Jargo says, hi James, who's the likely starter of Shimikas and Gomez when Gomez is a left back and can play in a back three? But he's not a left back, mate. Can he play in a back three? Yeah, sure. Could Joe Gomez play there? Is that a possibility? Yes. Yes, it is. Jarrell Quansah can also play that side. Is it possible? Yes. Do I think Shimikas will play? Also, yes. LH says, does Tonali's absence help Anderson's minutes? I don't know who'd start, Gay or Anderson. Well, Tonali's available to play for Newcastle tomorrow, so he's obviously liable to be in for a big suspension, but he's available tomorrow, so I wouldn't read too much into that. Obviously, Gordon being back is also worth factoring in there as well. Anderson is probably the best suited for the left central midfield role of what Newcastle have available at the moment, subject to, more importantly than Tonali, Joel Linton's availability is probably more important. If I had the two though, what would my expectation be on Mark Gay tomorrow? I'd probably punt Anderson, to be honest. Tom Sleeman says, I'm on a game with 9 wildcard. Thoughts on Trent? Nah, sorry, shakes head for benefit of audio listeners. I don't know how you pay that over Shimikas at the moment. Will Trent perform much better than Shimikas? Yeah, probably. Is it worth, what is it? It's like a 3 million more that could go into something else? No, I don't think so, personally. And also, there's too many other good rotatable options at sub 5 million. Your likes of Gabriel, and cash is beyond it now, but Udogi's still like 4.9. You got the likes of Dan Burn, Lewis Dunk, even from Brighton, decent rotation option. The West Ham defenders, there's so many cheap enabling defensive options. Sure, he's great, but I don't think it's worth it. Tom Sleeman have just done. Panos says, Turner versus Luton or Onana at Sheffield United. Cheers. Well, I said I wouldn't be keen on benching Onana. But having submitted my predictions for the differential show, which will be available for patrons in around about 25 minutes, I'm back in Sheffield United to score tomorrow and not Luton. And so, therefore, the logical answer for me to give you is Turner. But that does not feel right. I have to be honest, that does not feel right. Multi-Live Evil says, best midfield 5 in a Salah Haaland team without Trippier. Best midfield 5. So with Salah, you're possibly going to be struggling for budget, but you could just go Haaland Watkins up front, right, and have an Archer. So let's say Salah. I think if I was wild carding now, Son would be in, Bowen would be in. I'd want to leave. I'd probably treat it as 1 week punt to get Saka next week, but I'd also want to get Martinelli as well. Bowen would go in, I think, definitely. Salah would go in. I'd want Sonny now, but Sonny could be the route to one of the Arsenal players. I'd probably go one of the Arsenal. So under the circumstances, arguably I'd go Martinelli now and leave open to go Son to Saka next week. And the 5th, I'd probably get Mitoma and leave myself in a position where I could put myself in a position where I was playing a back 4 this week of something like Porro, Burn, Dallo and Cash, for example. Maninda says, what would you do if you were an idiot with Flecken in Sky, also between Diaz, Dunk, Vardio, who is best to lose for Romero? It's don't lose Dunk at this stage if you've still got, mate. Everyone's going back to him next week. So Gvardiol really is the answer. In terms of Flecken, as mentioned earlier, there's speculation that he may have even trained this week. So look, if he has, sit down, let it be. David James Whiteway says on wildcard, is Diaby Bowen a better combo than Son and Anderson of Newcastle? Yes, probably. Yeah, Yeah, I'd say it probably is, yeah. Garlic25 says 2 threes. Do I do Mbumo to Bowen and roll? Or Bruno to Son? Already have Maddison and Salah. And Mbumo to Gordon. I have Botman share already. Thanks. Okay. So you want to do one of these because you've got to, basically. Have you, though? Is there nothing else in the team that you can fix up? Nothing else in that team you can fix up. I'd arguably... Bruno to Son, isn't it? I suppose, in terms of the timing this week. Like, if you are going to Sonny, get on with it. So, I suppose Sonny's the one now. Emmanuel says, what players do you think in Premier League that if signed by Spurs would be immediate upgrades in your lineup? Well, there's loads, mate. There's loads of players I could pick from the very competitive teams in this league. Loads. There's loads. Too many to mention, to be honest, mate. Majority of attacking number 9s. Not as wrong with Sonny, but anybody that's decent left wing. The player that I've referenced that would be an absolutely perfect signing for Tottenham at the moment, but I think is beyond getting, is Mitoma. So there's one name for you. Emily Sissoni says, hey James, was going to roll this week, but with Pinnock currently benched, nearly dropping, would you go him to Gabriel or Shimikas? Was going to do the move next week anyway. Yeah, probably. Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, if you don't need to do it, then don't necessarily do it now. But if you're concerned from the value perspective and you will definitely sell Pinnock, then yeah, the way I'd probably do that, therefore, if you don't need the player this week, is I'd probably prefer you went Gabriel first, if you can, and then come back from Shimikas once you know that he's playing. Daniel Cullerton says, any reason why Liverpool are twice as regular the early kickoff compared to the second most? Is it just complete coincidence? It probably is a little bit. The next one against Manchester City is unfortunate because it's a Sky selection game and it's being forced to be a 12:30 kickoff because of the police, basically, rather than the television companies. I've been left in absolutely no choice. The game couldn't be moved to a Sunday because Manchester City are playing in the Champions League on a Tuesday. So there was no choice. And beforehand is internationals. It literally it cannot be anything but the 12:30 kickoff on a Sunday, or they don't show the game at all and it's 3 o'clock. So look, it's a trend, but look, everybody aware of that trend now, and you can bet that Sky will leave Liverpool fixtures non-televised, forcing TNT to try and do it and cause the argument. But they probably won't, right? They'll go for Liverpool games that aren't straight after internationals coming up. So everybody's so aware of it now. In all seriousness, it probably has been coincidence. There's a few times where it's been enforced. I feel like maybe even City Liverpool last year was forced to be a 12:30 Saturday as well, I think. Burgers 11 says Tarko to Shimikas will roll the trade. Keep up the great work, mate. Yeah, look, no real reason to keep hold of a Tarkovsky at this stage, really, with the fixtures Everton have got coming up. So yeah, I'd make the move. Thomas McLeod says, hi James, if getting Saka in 10 requires a -4, is it worth just going Martinelli for free? I think the answer for that will come back to captaincy again, mate. Michael Scott says, hi James, would you start Saliba, who Arteta hopes will be okay, subject to final training, or Gvardiol and risk the cameo points? Probably no clean sheet for either. Yeah, it probably is no clean sheet for either. Gvardiol. Just about. Purely because it's a little bit more. If we're saying probably, and I agree, I think probably Chelsea and Brighton both score tomorrow, but I'd bet Man City score more than Arsenal. So Gvardiol. John Cahill says, morning James, what do you make of Szoboszlai as an FPL asset? Unlucky not to get another assist against Brighton. Yeah, fine. Really like him as a player. I've spoken about a lot. I just think there's too many other good options in and around that value. Bowen, Martinelli's dropping into that value. Diaby, Mitoma. There's others I'm forgetting off the top of my head. So many good options that I don't think it's necessary. It feels like having a Liverpool player for the sake of having a Liverpool player, and I just wouldn't. Chocolate Orange says Areola or Leno this week. Probably Areola just. N7 Iceman says, do you think what happened in Gaza affects Salah play and focus and Haaland after Norway lost? No, that's overthinking. They're professionals at the top of their game. So no. Keith Rowley says, morning boss, have a great weekend. You too. Daniel says, do you think the amount of money Spurs are given to spend in January depends on what position you are in the league at the time? No, Tottenham have availability to spend money, right? It's more about, can they get the players that they want and from the value that they deem of these players, which is always more difficult to do in January. So look, Tottenham could be top, and if they can't get any of the players they want for the right value, they won't invest. They could be sitting fourth and comfortably in the top four, but miles off the title race, and might still go and really invest if they can get what the profile player they want for the right money. So no, it's not going to matter, mate. Jack Stedman says, my worst start to an FPL season ever. Taking a risk with wildcard this week with no Haaland to fit in Salah. Prefer the next few fixtures for Salah. Am I mad? No, it's a viable strategy, mate, and as ever, play it your way. Isaac Stairs says, hi James, non-FPL question. If Pochettino and Chelsea have a horrible run over the next 10 games, how much time will he be given when the likes of Hansi Flick are available? Thanks and have a good weekend. But did they want to go to Hansi Flick after his spell with Germany? So look, it depends how bad, right? Chelsea's run is horrendous over the next 7, basically. So expectation on, there isn't an expectation for Chelsea to get 2 points per game from that. But if they did so, that's a great return, for example, over those 7 games. Now, so if they're kind of punching at 10, 11 points over that period, I think it's mitigating because the run's very bad. Then there's a very good run. So I think Chelsea would need to do really badly. And that would be at kind of a rate that was around about a point per game, which would probably already rule them out of top 4 contention if that was to be the case. But I still don't know if that would enforce a change. It's probably going to be dependent on the mood amongst the fan base, I should imagine. Zikwan says, have Botman, but he's looking for a 1-week punt before wildcard 10 and have Anderson as sub in case Botman doesn't play. Would you make a transfer, assuming happy with rest of the team? And if yes, for whom? Shimikas question. That's the one, yep. Will Shaw says, if Estupiñán comes back for Brighton's good run, where would you rank him amongst 5 million plus defenders? Really high, of course, yeah. There's a few I've given the solution to sell him at the moment, but yes, if he comes back, yeah, he's on radar and potentially part of my plan, but for me it's probably not till maybe game at 12 or so. So with him, you got the liability for potential rotation, which we know he does play the majority of the games, but the fact he's had a recent injury may well impact that forthcoming. Whereas at the moment it feels like with the likes of Porro, Cash, Dalot, they're all going to play at the moment. Now, is Estupiñán arguably the best of that? Yes, he might be with those Brighton fixtures, because even with them, there's liable to be some clean sheets over that period. So yes, I would rank him very highly. Rory McGregor says, cheers, James. Big up your bad self. And to you too, Rory. CM Punk 2310 says, what is your opinion on the early kickoff curse? Overrated. Ollie Watkins got 23 points in a 12:30 recently. So, no, if you want to captain Salah, you captain Salah, mate. Mans Acne Anderson says, most teams are flying. No. Are Chelsea flying? Are Manchester United flying? Brentford flying? Sam Vine says, plenty of buses go to Falmer and it is a shorter walk to the Amex stand from 7 dials to your ground. Okay. Fog is more of a threat if that happens. Okay, cool. Dave 2 says, hi James, wildcard in game week 8 and I have Richarlison and Nunes. Would you roll in my scenario or would you move early for Mitoma? Worried both get benched. My bench is Gay, Archer, Taylor. Yeah, no, I'd keep going, mate. Mitoma next week. Dave 2 says, like the stream, folks, doesn't cost anything. Yeah, it would be nice, guys. Smash a like if you're in the stream. If you're listening on the audio, a nice review and a 5-star rating goes a long way for us, believe it or not, guys. Atul Balaji says, would you be willing to make 2 or 3 transfers to get Saka in for Arsenal run or just get Martinelli? Again, depends what you're selling, Atul. Sorry, and that's a really simplistic answer, but it really does depend what you're selling, right? So if you're selling shit, yeah, make as many transfers as it needs. Jacko says, if James is fit, would you do Gusto to Shimikas from -4? Well, we think Reece James is fit, and I think he'll probably start. I don't know about the -4 though, but again, like, what else have you got back there? Dave 2 says, Freezer Whisper James, game changer. Wow, I'd never heard that. Okay. All right. Maybe we'll give that a go. Spud Maestro says, I have 2 free transfers and the exact cash to do this move. Ward-Prowse and Morris to Hudson-Odoi and Watkins. Happy to bench Hudson-Odoi until 14-ish after this week. False. I'm trying to think why Hudson-Odoi. Because you want to play him this week as well, I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess, obviously, you can't go into the likes of Gordon's value. I will assume that's money, and similar for the likes of Hwang. Nah. I'm not convinced, you know. I'm also, if you're going to bench it, I'd almost rather you came right down. So, I mean, a different one would give a little bit more money. It might block you, depends what you've got. But consider my boy Pap Sarr. If you're not in a position of free Tottenham, because I think you're probably, if you're not adding this week, say you got 2, you're probably unlikely to add after this week, I think. So maybe that's an alternative. I'm not sure Bryce Hudson-Odoi is. I'm guessing he's probably 4.9. D-Taff says 1 week punt, Wilson or Højlund. Wilson, if he's fit. But it's that, isn't it? David Chans Whiteway says frozen grapes are beautiful. Okay. Ez Thrifty says game week 10, my route to Saka without a hit is selling Son. Worth it. Good luck, James. Yeah, it might be. And again, if Captaincy's going to come into play, then yeah, can't really argue it. The Waddler GG says, hi James, thanks for the stream. Would you start Shimikas or Udogie game week 10? Shimikas with that fixture, mate, to be totally honest. Yeah, Forest at home versus Udogie at Palace. Yeah, it's Shimikas, isn't it? Akbar says best sub 6 million midfielder. If buying this week, I'm going to say Anthony Gordon. Dixie says, hi James, go with Haaland or Salah for the next 6 weeks. I've zero interest in getting them both in. I'm on Haaland, so that's going to be the advice. Mr. Dyer says, is Stupinan and Botman to Shimikas and Cash? What do you think? Yep, don't mind that. Zikan says, what are your thoughts if Sheikh Jassim bids for Spurs? I don't want him to, and it's not going to happen. Tottenham, I don't think have any intention of selling at the moment. Patrick Gordart says, best budget defender in Sky, 7.5 below. How many times can we say Konstantinos Shimikas on the stream? You get to see the team tomorrow, mate. Luke Stevenson says, hi James, I'm captain Trippier or Salah. I think Liverpool game will be tight, low scoring, plus don't like the early kickoff. Don't get why so many are scared of captain defenders. Points are points. You will find Trippier 4th on the captaincy graphic on tomorrow's deadline stream, which starts at 10 a.m. Just on that, by the way, no deadline stream next week because I'm going to Crystal Palace. So instead of Ask James next Friday, I will do not the game week 10 deadline stream earlier for you with all the graphics. Te Ox Song says, I have Anderson. We've got a lot of Andersons in this game at the moment, mate. Taylor and Mitchell on my bench. Would you start any of them over Darwin this week? No. Ruben Villa says, Alderkill fit to play for Burnley. We think probably yes. Probably. Came off at half-time against Chelsea. And Vincent Kompany was quite hopeful, judging on his comments yesterday. So hopefully yes. But they're light. Both those two teams playing each other tomorrow, Brentford and Burnley, have got big defensive issues at the moment. Jay says, would you start Anderson? I'm presuming this is Joachim or Gusto. Both expect to concede, but who's likely to get an attack in return this week? I'd probably play Anderson. Me and Clayton speak on the differential show, be out for patrons very shortly, about that if Newcastle didn't score early, we could vision the game maybe ending goalless. And I think Gusto inevitably comes on for Reece James, would be my take. Scratch and Sniff, if that makes you happy, mate, says, as a Villa fan, I think most people are forgetting about Dean. Compared to Cash, he gets slightly further forward and his crossing ability is impressive. I don't think anyone are forgetting, mate. I think people are remembering about Alex Moreno. Faithful to Yeshua says, I actually have Dean and happy not to have Cash. He takes corners. And finally, Noble says, hi James, Almiron to Gibbs White on a free transfer. Good transfer. Don't know why, if you owned Miguel Almiron, you'd want to necessarily get rid this week. I know obviously played for Paraguay, but I would imagine he'd start for Newcastle tomorrow. Right, I think that's all the questions covered. Thanks very much who joined in and contributed to the chat. If you're in watching live, smash a like. Be very, very much appreciated. Reminder, tickets on sale for our live show Sunday, November the 5th at the Thirsty Bear in Waterloo, central London. Live screening of Forest v Villa, Luton v Liverpool, followed by me and Suj doing our live Game Week 11 review podcast with an audience. Join many members of the FPL community. We've got some big names coming along on the day as well. Tickets cost £5. But all proceeds are donated to Game Week 39, the charity fundraiser from the FPL community, and the event's brought to you in partnership with our friends at FPL Meets. Deadline stream, as said, is 10 a.m. tomorrow morning live on this YouTube channel. But just sees me, so have a great weekend, everyone. Play it your way, and for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, man child.